Big Brother of government. And if you're doing something funny, then I must expose it, because it is my job for the taxpayer to know exactly what you're doing. In the Philippine context, that's not necessarily what is obtaining now. What do we have right now? We have the following givens. We have 28 daily broadsheets and tabloids in the national capital regions. We have 129 provincial community media members or daily and weekly tabloids in the provinces, in English and in the dialects. There are more than 100 weeklies which are members of the Philippine Press Institute. The Institute is an organization of newspapers, not of individuals. Then you have some of that 100 weeklies and dailies are members also of the PAPI, Philippine Association, no, Publishers Association of the Philippines Incorporated, which was a creation of martial law, years of Marcos, and it should have terminated itself when Marcos was kicked out, but they figured they must continue for some reason or another. You have more than 400 AM and FM private and government radio stations, members or non-members of Kapisanan ng mga Broadcasters sa Pilipinas. This part, I think David and I will take up later. 3 major TV networks and 1 government TV network, more than 100 cable TV establishments nationwide. You have at least 30 million receivers of AM, FM radios. At least 15 million estimated TV sets, and at least 40 million cell phone subscribers. Now, I propose that I will discuss first why the deteriorating quality of journalism. And this is now a big problem, a huge burden on the part of the printed media. Number 1, you have the advances in technology, which erodes the use of correct English. Even the spelling, as you see in cell phones, really corrupts the way the English language is used. Not to mention the fact that students, including mine in Lyceum, feel funny when they speak English. I don't know why, for one reason or another. There is a deterioration in the reading habits. They don't read newspapers, although I require my students to read the daily newspapers every day, because only then can you obtain and develop the critical thinking mindset. Without that, you are dead meat, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to printed journalism. Next, I think, is how I should explain to you how news is processed. Ideally, and as it is obtaining now in the Philippine newspapers. Ideally, news is supposed to be defined as processed information, and the output is what you read in the papers. How do you do that? First, you have to have a dedication and allegiance to nobody else of the reporter but the truth. Because whatever you do, you have to report the truth, whether it's advertising, whether it's plain news, whether it's interpretative or investigative writing. you still have to do that. And you must not betray public trust for them to get what is truth. Okay, truth has two sides. I mean, any issue has two sides, the truth and the lie. Now, it all depends on where you stand. You see, Ping Lacson was demanding for truth all the time when he was the hunter. Now that he's the hunted, he says all of these are lies. So you see, there is a very, very thin line between idiocy, truth and lies, and who says it, you see. So you will find, as we progress, as we march on to the next decade, you will find government also trying its best, just like a virus that tries to be immune to all the medicine that one takes, you know, that tries best to use spinners. We call them the spinners, yes. Remember Tuting Buni, when he was presenting the Hello Garci issue? He had two CDs, yeah, which there should be only one, because that's the truth. But because he was a spinner, he was trying to he must helot. He was trying to helot the whole damn lie to make it appear it's the truth. Yeah. Or when you talk of the girl, the deputy spokesperson of Gloria Arroyo, what's her name? Lori Liar. Lori Liar. She was saying there was going to be no change in the friendship. She was trying to tell the truth, and so she was fired. Now, after you get the news, after you get the truth, that goes to the reporter. The reporter writes it and submits it to the editor, who then ideally should have somebody to vet or double check the items, because it's not easy to just accept what has been given to the editor. If I was the editor, I'll never do that. I never did that. My training with the Associated Press says, the first 3 months, I was told, oh, you're not going to write anything. I said, shit, you hired me and I'm not going to write anything. Yes, you don't. You are going to see how we write it, how we treat the story, what we do with the processed story, how we write it to suit everybody around the world, because the AP has more than 10,000 clients worldwide. And so you're supposed to be able to write something that a 9-year-old would understand, a 9-year-old with 15-year experience. Yeah. So the idea is to be able to write briefly, straight to the point. Don't force the reader to go to the dictionary. When you say the subject or the person went for a haircut, don't say he went for a tonsorial operation. Or when you mean there was a flood, you don't say there was an inundation. If it is a fire, it's a fire. It's not a conflagration. These are the little things that bring up the quality of the reporter. They bring up the quality of the newsman in the language that he's supposed to do the story. Tagalog or English, I don't care. But do it correctly. After the editor does it, it goes now down to the editor-in-chief, who has the final say. Now, in some cases in Manila, it doesn't go to the editor-in-chief. The editor-in-chief does not sit at the desk. In some cases, it's the managing editor who does this all, signs every page of the paper that goes to the press. And the press, the printing press now, moves on after everything else is done, including the layout, and it goes to the distribution. Now, this distribution must be on exact time as specified by the editor-in-chief, because that should be coordinated with the circulation and the advertising and the promotions plan, and which is which is actually under the aegis or supervision of the publisher. The publisher ideally should not have anything to do with editorials, because the editorial is the expense center of the paper, whereas the publishing is the income. That's where you have the advertising, that's where you have the promotion, and that's where you have people like in Time Magazine thinking how to make it relevant for every move to its circulation and marketing promotion. One example, in the 60s, somebody in New York sitting down in the accounting department asked the question, how much are we earning from our sponsorship of trips to Asia? Nobody could answer. So he came up with a solution. Why doesn't Time Magazine organize a world tour for the top 100 corporations in fortune, limited only to CEOs, CFOs, executive vice presidents, only those three? Why? Because these people are by themselves frustrated newspaper people. They can see the head of state anytime because of the money, because of their position. But they cannot ask the questions they would be willing to ask and would want to ask, just like news reporters, if they were sponsored by Time Magazine. So we had, at that time, we had the world tour. We quartered the world. Asia and North America, then you have Africa, and then you have South America at that time. Because at that time, that was the flow of the advertising revenues. And at that time, there was still this American penchant to spend more than what they earn. See, the consumerism was at its peak at that time. Therefore, quarter the world, and that's it. After 2 years, they found out they earned $10 billion. $10 billion after 2 years by sponsoring trips of these executives. Can you imagine one plane load of top 100 executives, top 100 companies in the world? If that plane went down, can you imagine how much capital will be scrambling for successors, in those positions? They will at least suffer 1 week loss of revenue, you see. But it paid off, and that's the direct relation between the publishing and the editorial. Why? Because people watch TV, listen to radio, read the newspaper by force of habit, because they have learned to trust the media. And that takes time. It takes the time, because it should be a habit. Once they form the habit, you have a habit of eating breakfast, right? So the people who sell you breakfast are happy about it, and they try to make you feel more hungry at breakfast, wanting to buy some more. That's the same principle when it comes to the publishing side of newspapers. How does it work in the Philippines? As it works in the Philippines, I'm sad to admit that only some newspapers, probably 2, are trying to delineate the jobs of the publisher and the editor-in-chief. One newspaper, I'll tell you which one. This one, because it's not libelous. I can cite the issue. This newspaper is the Manila Daily Bulletin. The headline says, "Tomorrow is Labor Day." That's the headline. In real, honestly, goodness, professional journalism, that's a no-no. It's a 9-year-old news. It's a newspaper for 9-year-olds. Even though my 5-year-old granddaughter is not going to read it. But they do that. And that's because they don't have as much quality control when it comes to production of the newspaper. That starts from use of the language. getting the information, processing the information, and printing it out. I'm not saying that the American and European media are not are immune to those kind of ailments. They're not. But the degree that they have their own ailments or sickness is different. It's something that's they can remedy immediately, and the amount of honesty that goes into the work of a newspaper in those countries are far different from what we have here. And in the cases of the provincial newspapers, this is so because the publishers, I blame the publishers squarely in this, the publishers do not give the correct wages to these people. They're given allowances. Most of them don't get any exact monthly wages as regular employees. There is a joke, and this was in Batangas, so you can imagine how the intonation goes. Eh, ako ay gusto ko ay pumasok, reporter sa inyo. Ay gusto mo? Ay madali yan. Anak, are, gawan siya ng press card. Are, yan. Eh magkano ang sweldo ko? Ay putang ama. Binigyan ka na ng press card, magtatanong ko po magkano sweldo mo. That is the counterpart of the police in the provinces. Binigyan ka ng batutan baril, magtatanong ko magkano sweldo mo, ano ka sinuswerte. And that's where the corruption starts. What I'm saying is, and you must know this, there is corruption called envelopmental journalism in Philippine press, in the Philippine media, which you don't find in Western media. You find it in Thailand, yes. And this is one of the reasons I quit my job as publisher in Bangkok in 1978 to 1980 is because of that. They tried to do it. I said, you can't do it, and you can't hide from your own corporation the earnings that you should have made, but they do. So I told my so-called Philippine map